It was a cold night in early winter. The wind howled through the trees, and the stars above were hidden by heavy clouds. The only sound in the quiet countryside was the creaking of an old wooden gate near the edge of the forest. Raymond Clark, a 72-year-old farmer with a gray beard and a worn-out coat, stood outside his small farmhouse, sipping hot coffee from a tin cup. He had lived alone for the last 15 years, ever since his wife passed away. His days were slow, and his nights were quiet. He liked the silence. But this night, something broke that silence. A loud rumble came from the sky. It was not like thunder. It was deeper, stranger, like a growl from the heavens. Raymond looked up. For a moment, he saw nothing. But then, something fiery sliced through the clouds. A bright light flashed across the night sky, leaving a trail of smoke and sparks. It was fast, too fast for a plane. Then, just before it disappeared behind the trees, he heard it, a crash. Loud, heavy, like something big had fallen from the sky and slammed into the earth. Raymond dropped his cup. It shattered on the ground. He didn't wait. He grabbed his flashlight and his old hunting rifle and climbed into his rusty pickup truck. The forest was only a few minutes away, but the road was rough. As he drove, he kept thinking, meteor, plane, satellite, what the hell was that? When he reached the edge of the woods, he turned off the engine and stepped out. The air smelled burnt, like metal and smoke. He followed the trail of broken branches and scorched grass, deeper into the trees. His flashlight flickered, but it was enough to see the strange glowing light ahead. His heart pounded. There in a clearing was something he had never seen before. It was not a plane. It was not a meteor. It looked like a small ship, but not one made by any human. It was shaped like a teardrop, smooth and silver, with strange symbols carved into its sides. Part of it was broken, leaking blue steam into the air. Sparks flew from the torn metal. Raymond raised his rifle slowly, unsure what to expect. Then he heard it, a soft cry. He turned his flashlight toward the sound and froze. A woman was lying next to the wreckage. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight on water. Her long silver hair flowed over her shoulders, tangled and dirty. Her clothes were torn, strange-looking, not from this world. But what shocked him most was what she held in her arms. A baby, wrapped in glowing white fabric, breathing, crying. The woman looked up at him with wide, tired eyes. She looked frightened. Her lips moved, and she spoke, slowly, in broken English. "Please, don't hurt us. Please." Raymond's rifle lowered a little. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. She was not human, that was clear, but she was alive, and so was the child. Who are you?" Raymond asked, his voice shaking. She looked down at the baby, then back at him. Her body was trembling. "My name, Seyla," she said. "We come from far, far away." Raymond stepped closer, still stunned. The baby, to his surprise, looked normal, human, a boy with dark hair and warm skin. No glowing marks, no alien features. "Is that your child?" he asked carefully. She nodded slowly. "Yes, my son." His father was human. Raymond blinked. "What?" Seyla struggled to sit up, holding the baby tight. "We were in love, but now he is gone. They killed him. They want to kill my son. I had to run. I had to hide." Raymond knelt down beside her, still not sure if this was a dream or something worse. "Who wants to kill your son?" Her eyes filled with fear. "My people. They hate what he is. They say he is wrong. A mix. An insult. But he is not wrong. He is beautiful. He is hope." Lightning flashed in the distance. Thunder followed. The baby cried louder. Seyla winced in pain. She had a deep cut on her side, and she was losing blood fast. Raymond made a quick decision. "Can you walk?" She shook her head. He didn't ask more. He gently took the baby in one arm and helped Seyla to her feet. She was weak, but she leaned on him. Together, they left the crash behind. He knew others would find it soon. Satellites, government men, maybe worse. He brought her to his old barn, the one behind his farmhouse that no one used anymore. He laid her on the hay and wrapped her wound the best he could. The baby slept now, held close by his mother. "You're safe here," Raymond whispered. "I don't know who you are, but I won't let anyone hurt you." Seyla looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, old man." Raymond smiled softly. "Name's Raymond." Outside, the rain began to fall. And far above Earth, something else moved in the dark sky. Something big, something searching. But for now, the alien widow and her half-human child were safe. For now. The morning after the crash, the sun barely peeked through the clouds. The rain had stopped, but the world still smelled of wet earth and smoke. Raymond sat at his kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. The barn, where he had hidden Seyla and the child, stood quiet in the distance. His mind raced with thoughts of what he had seen the night before. The woman, the child, the strange ship. All of it felt like a dream, something impossible. Yet there they were, hiding in his barn. He had told no one. He couldn't. Who would believe him? An alien woman and a child born of a human. This wasn't something anyone would understand. The government, the military, they would come looking. They would ask questions. Questions Raymond couldn't answer. He didn't even know who Seyla really was. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't turn her away. As he finished his coffee, Raymond stood up and walked to the barn. His boots made a soft crunch against the wet grass as he approached the door. He paused for a moment, listening. Inside, all was silent. Too silent. His heart beat a little faster. He opened the door slowly, not wanting to disturb whatever peaceful moments Seyla and her child were having. Seyla was sitting in the corner, her back against the barn's wall. The baby lay beside her, wrapped tightly in blankets. She was looking at him with tired eyes, but her expression had softened. She had been through a lot, and yet there was something about her that still held on to strength. Raymond stepped inside. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. Seyla looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Better. But the pain, it's still there." Raymond knelt down beside her. "You need to rest. You can stay here for as long as you need." She nodded. "Thank you. You don't know what it means to me." The baby stirred in his sleep, his small hand reaching out. Seyla gently lifted him, holding him close. Raymond could see the tenderness in her eyes. The love, the bond between mother and child was something he couldn't understand completely, but he felt the weight of it all the same. "I don't know where to go from here," she said softly. "I thought I could find a place to hide, but it's never enough. They will come for us." Raymond frowned. Who will come?" Seyla's eyes darkened. "My people. The ones who think like machines. They believe in order above all. My son is a mistake in their eyes, a hybrid, a creature born of human and alien. To them, that's a crime, a disease." She paused. She was a stranger on a strange planet, with no allies. Only an old farmer who had no idea how to protect them from the forces that were coming. The sky outside had grown darker, a storm rolling in once again. Raymond stepped out of the barn to prepare the truck for the journey. He had a feeling that no matter how far they ran, no matter where they hid, the storm wouldn't stop until they were found. He didn't know how long they could stay hidden, but he wasn't about to let them face it alone. The days blurred together, each one heavier than the last. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung thick in the sky, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Raymond kept a close eye on the road, making sure no one passed by. The cabin in the hills was as hidden as he could make it, but the knowledge that danger was so close gnawed at him like an itch that couldn't be scratched. Seyla and her son had settled into the small cabin. The child, whom she called Lior, had begun to show signs of unusual abilities. Raymond had seen it first one evening when the boy had been playing near the fireplace, a small, flickering flame dancing in the logs. Lior had reached out with his tiny hand, and the flame danced toward him, swirling in the air as if it were alive. At first, Raymond thought it was a trick of the light, but when the flame settled into Lior's palm, swirling softly before settling like a warm glow, Raymond knew he wasn't seeing things. Seyla had watched him from across the room, her face full of a quiet fear. "He's special," she had whispered, her voice tight. "More than I ever thought possible. They'll come for him. He's the last of his kind." Raymond didn't know how to respond. He simply nodded, a heavy weight settling in his chest. The truth was, he didn't understand any of this. Aliens, hybrid children, royal families. But one thing he did understand was that the world they both lived in was about to change. That evening, as the storm clouds rolled in, Raymond heard the familiar hum of a vehicle outside. His heart skipped a beat. He'd been keeping his distance from the main road, but still, the sound of an engine was unmistakable. He cautiously peered through the small, fogged-up window of the cabin. His breath caught in his throat. A car, dark and sleek, sat just outside the gate of the small cabin. It was a vehicle unlike anything Raymond had ever seen, black and smooth, with an unsettling, almost alien shape. There were no markings, no license plate, just darkness, like the night itself had taken shape and parked at his doorstep. The door creaked behind him. He spun around to see Seyla standing in the doorway, her face pale. Her eyes were wide with alarm. "They're here," she said softly, almost to herself. Raymond didn't need to ask who she meant. He grabbed his rifle and motioned for her to stay back. But she shook her head. "Not this time. This is my fight," she said with a quiet fire in her eyes. "They'll never stop coming for Lior. I need to end this now." Raymond stared at her. He had seen strength in people before, but nothing like this. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for her son's future, and for something much bigger than either of them could comprehend. Seyla took a deep breath, her hand steady as she cradled Lior in her arms. The child was silent, his eyes wide with an understanding far beyond his years. She moved to the corner of the room and knelt beside a small bag she had brought with her when they arrived. She pulled out a strange device, smooth, metallic, and glistening. She pressed a button on it, and a soft blue light flickered to life. Raymond was too stunned to speak. "What is that?" he asked, though he already knew it wasn't anything human. "It's a communication device," Seyla explained quietly. "It'll help me contact my people, my allies, the ones who can protect Lior from those who want to see him dead." Raymond felt his pulse quicken. "Allies? You're saying you have a way out of this?" Seyla shook her head. "No, this device will only get their attention. But if it works, it will show them that my son isn't just a target. He's the future, the key to ending the war. He's a bridge between our worlds. But my people won't understand that. Not yet." Raymond's mind spun. His world had been small and quiet. Until now. And now, everything he thought he knew was upended. He was no longer just a farmer. He was caught in a galactic struggle between beings that spanned across stars and worlds. Just as Raymond opened his mouth to speak, the silence outside shattered. The car doors slammed open. Heavy boots hit the ground. The sound of voices reached his ears, low and harsh, speaking in a language he didn't understand. "They're here," Seyla said again, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. Raymond's grip on his rifle tightened. "What do we do now?" "We wait," she whispered. "And we fight if we must." The door to the cabin creaked open, and a tall figure stepped into the dim light. The man wore a black, form-fitting suit that shimmered in the soft glow of the cabin. His face was stern, his eyes hard, as though he had seen 1,000 battles and lost just as many. Behind him, a group of 3 others entered the room. Their movements were sharp, practiced, and cold. They were not human. Raymond instinctively stepped in front of Seyla, blocking her from their view. The man at the front raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Step aside, human," he said in perfect English. His voice was smooth, but carried a hidden threat. Raymond didn't move. "I don't know who you are, but you're not welcome here. I'll protect them, no matter who you are." The man laughed, a sound that was cold and cruel. "You don't understand, old man. We are not here for you. We are here for the child." Seyla's face hardened. "Leave him alone. He has done nothing wrong." The leader of the group ignored her, his eyes now fixed on Raymond. "Step aside, or we'll take him by force. You cannot protect him. He is not yours to protect." Raymond's hand shook, but he stood firm. "I don't care who you are. You will not harm him." The leader's eyes darkened. He gave a signal to the others. Suddenly, the air in the cabin grew thick with tension. Raymond's mind raced, but his body was frozen, like a man caught in a trap. Without warning, Seyla stepped forward, her hand outstretched. The strange device in her hand flickered to life, and a loud, shrill sound filled the cabin. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and for a brief moment, the air shimmered around them. The leader's expression faltered. He turned quickly to his companions, speaking in that strange language. Raymond barely caught the words, something about the signal and the prince. The tension in the room grew thicker, and Raymond's heart raced. Seyla's voice cut through the silence. "You can try to take him, but you'll never get him. Not without a fight. I'm not the woman I used to be." The leader smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then we'll see who fights the hardest." In that moment, Raymond understood. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a war for the future of two worlds. And somehow, he had become part of it. The days that followed were marked by a heavy silence, a silence that pressed down on Raymond like the weight of the sky itself. Every hour seemed to stretch longer than the last, as though time had slowed to match the growing tension in the small cabin. The car that had parked outside their hidden refuge a few days ago hadn't returned, but neither had Raymond seen or heard anything that made him feel safe. He could feel the air growing thicker with each passing hour. The reality of the situation was impossible to ignore. Seyla and her child were not just hiding from bounty hunters. They were hiding from a world they had both fled from, a world that was now threatening to come crashing into the quiet life Raymond had known for so long. Lior, the child, had grown more curious each day. He was still small, but his eyes, dark and knowing, bore a maturity beyond his years. Seyla had told Raymond that Lior was no ordinary child. He was something entirely new, an existence that bridged two worlds, the human and the alien. His father had been human, but his mother's people were a race of beings who had evolved far beyond anything Raymond could comprehend. Seyla had said that, in time, Lior would grow into something unique, something the universe had never seen before. That afternoon, Raymond found himself sitting beside the hearth in the cabin, the fire crackling softly as the outside world remained dark and still. He glanced over at Lior, who was sitting on the floor, playing with a few small rocks he'd found around the cabin. The boy's small hands moved carefully, his fingers gently placing the rocks into a perfect circle. Raymond watched, unsure of what he was seeing. The child's concentration was intense, almost unnaturally so. Then, without warning, something strange happened. One of the rocks floated, just a few inches off the floor. Raymond's eyes widened, and he felt his heart race. He had seen many strange things in his life, strange enough to make him believe in things beyond the ordinary. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The small rock floated in the air for a moment before it gently dropped back to the floor, as though nothing had happened. But it wasn't nothing. Raymond knew that. He had seen it with his own eyes. Lior's dark eyes met his, as if he understood what Raymond was thinking. The boy said nothing, but there was a quiet confidence in his gaze, as though he knew what he was capable of. Seyla, who had been watching from the corner, stood up slowly, her expression unreadable. "He is not just a child," she said softly, her voice low and filled with a strange, almost mournful tenderness. "Lior is the product of two worlds, human and alien. He is the bridge. His power, it will grow as he does." Raymond swallowed, still processing what he had just witnessed. "What is he, exactly? I've seen things before, but this is different. It's not just the rocks, is it?" Seyla's gaze softened, and she moved to sit beside Raymond. She took a deep breath. "Lior's abilities are something unique. The people I fled from, my people, view him as a danger, a threat to their way of life. They fear him because he's something they can't control. His abilities are linked to his hybrid nature, the mixture of human and alien genes. But it's not just telekinesis. There's more." Raymond looked at the boy again, who was now fiddling with a small twig, twisting it, and bending it without touching it. It bent and curled in the air, as though the very fabric of reality was bending at his will. "He's controlling it," Raymond murmured, awestruck by the child's power. "He doesn't fully understand what he can do yet," Seyla continued, her voice steady, but filled with a hint of sadness. "His powers are tied to his emotions, to his connection to both his alien heritage and his human side. When he gets scared or angry, his abilities become stronger. But that also makes him dangerous." Raymond didn't know what to say. This was a child. His heart told him to protect him, but his mind was still trying to catch up with the implications of what Seyla was saying. If what she said was true, then Lior wasn't just a target of bounty hunters. He was something far more powerful and far more dangerous. "What happens when they find him?" Raymond asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "What will they do?" Seyla's face darkened. "They'll try to take him. And if they can't, they'll destroy him. They won't let a being like Lior exist. To them, he's a mistake, an abomination." Raymond's jaw clenched. He didn't know how much more of this he could take. His world had been simple, quiet, the kind of world where people lived and died, and that was the end of it. But now he was in the middle of a war he didn't understand, caught between two worlds that were both distant and deadly, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The air in the cabin shifted, becoming colder, heavier. Raymond turned toward the window, his heart leaping into his throat. He saw movement outside, a shadow, a shape that was far too large to be a bear or a deer. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He stood up quickly, instinctively reaching for his rifle. The same cold, metallic vehicle from before was parked just outside the cabin, its dark shape barely visible through the trees. "They found us," Seyla whispered, her voice strained with fear. "I knew it would happen. I didn't want to believe it, but now we don't have time. They've come for Lior." Raymond's grip tightened on his rifle, but his thoughts were jumbled. His heart was pounding in his chest. He had to act, but what could he do? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just an old farmer who had been dragged into a fight he never asked for. But as he turned to Seyla, he saw the determination in her eyes, the same determination he had seen in her the first night they met. She wasn't going to give up, and neither would he. "We need to move," Raymond said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "Now?" Seyla nodded, her face grim. She gently took Lior's hand and led him toward the back door. "We don't have much time. We'll have to use the forest as cover. But Raymond, there's something you need to understand. Once they find us, it won't be just them we're running from. It will be everyone." Raymond took one last look at the small cabin, the place where he had thought they could find some peace. But now it was nothing more than a trap. He stepped outside, the wind biting at his skin as he followed Seyla into the trees. They had to move fast, and they had to keep Lior safe, whatever the cost. Because Raymond knew, deep down, that the fight had only just begun. The forest was cold, and the wind howled through the tall trees as Raymond, Seyla, and Lior moved deeper into the woods. The thick cover of branches and foliage helped them stay hidden, but with every step, Raymond could feel the danger closing in. Every snapping twig, every rustling leaf sent a chill down his spine. The thought of what they were running from weighed heavily on his mind. The quiet of the forest felt more like a trap now, a place where shadows could creep in and silence could swallow them whole. Seyla walked ahead, her gaze constantly darting to the sides, watching for movement. She had always been alert, Raymond realized, always prepared for danger, even in this foreign world. Her grip on Lior's hand was tight, protective. She moved with a purpose that Raymond couldn't fully understand, but he knew she wasn't just running. She was fighting for her son's future, and with every step they took, the tension grew heavier. Every branch that cracked underfoot seemed to echo with the sound of approaching doom. "We have to find shelter," Seyla said, her voice low but urgent. "There's a cave up ahead. I know the way." Raymond nodded, trying to keep his breathing steady, but his heart pounded in his chest. He felt the weight of his rifle against his shoulder, but it was as though it was nothing more than a comfort now, an empty piece of metal. He wasn't prepared for what they might face next. Seyla had told him that the bounty hunters weren't just after her. They were after her son, Lior, the hybrid child who was now a symbol of everything the alien world feared. The boy was special, Seyla had said. He was the key to an end to the war between their species. But he was also a weapon in the wrong hands, a danger to the order that ruled her people. And so they hunted him, relentlessly, with a determination that could only come from a deep, unyielding belief in their own righteousness. Seyla stopped suddenly, raising her hand in a signal for Raymond to halt. She turned, her face pale, but her expression hard, as if she could feel something lurking in the distance. Raymond tensed, his fingers tightening on his rifle. "What is it?" he whispered, his eyes scanning the woods around them. "They found us," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the wind. "They're not far behind. I can feel it." Raymond swallowed hard, his heart racing. He turned to look at Lior, whose eyes were wide but calm. There was something unsettling about how the child remained so composed, as though he knew what was coming, as if he had been born for this moment. His dark eyes flicked toward Raymond and then back to his mother, but he said nothing. It was as though he understood that his safety was no longer just a matter of hiding. It was about survival. Seyla stepped forward, pulling Lior close. "We need to move faster. Stay low and keep close." Raymond didn't argue. They began to move again, faster now, their pace quickening as they neared the cave that Seyla had mentioned. The ground beneath them was uneven, rocky, and treacherous. Raymond stumbled once but caught himself before falling. His mind was racing with thoughts of how long they could keep running, how long they could remain hidden. They were being hunted, and no matter how far they ran, no matter how much ground they covered, he knew the hunters would follow. They reached the cave just as the first light of day began to break through the clouds. It was a small opening in the side of the mountain, barely noticeable unless you knew what you were looking for. Seyla led them inside, and Raymond helped her set up a small makeshift camp. There was little in the way of supplies, just a few blankets and some dried food from their previous journey. They settled in as best they could, and for a few moments there was an uneasy silence. The cave was small, and the air inside was damp, but it offered some shelter from the elements. Seyla sat with Lior close beside her, her gaze constantly shifting as if she could feel the eyes of the world on them. "I don't know how long we can stay here," Raymond said, breaking the silence. "They'll be looking for us." Seyla nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "They won't stop, not until they have him." Raymond clenched his fists. "We have to do something. We can't just hide forever." Seyla's eyes softened, and she sighed deeply. "I've tried running for so long, Raymond, but I know that the only way to protect Lior, to protect all of us, is to make them see him for what he truly is, to make them understand that he's not a weapon. He's a future." Raymond looked at Lior, his mind still reeling from everything he had learned. This child, this boy, was more than just an innocent bystander. He was the future of two worlds. And yet, his existence was a threat to everything that both his alien mother's people and humanity stood for. How do you plan on making them see that? Raymond asked. Seyla hesitated, her gaze flickering to Lior, who had curled up beside her, his eyes half closed. There is one way. I can send a signal. A message to those who still believe in him. My allies. They've been waiting for a sign. But sending that message will not be easy. It will attract attention, dangerous attention, and I fear it may be too late for us by the time they come. Raymond's heart sank. And if we don't send the message? Seyla's voice grew quiet, almost a whisper. If we don't, they will find him. And when they do, they won't stop until they destroy him. And with him, any chance of peace between our worlds. Raymond felt a surge of anger and helplessness. This wasn't just about protecting an innocent child. It was about the fate of two worlds. And Seyla was right. There was no easy way out. There was no running from this. The choice had been made the moment Lior was born. He didn't know what kind of strength it took to carry the weight of such a responsibility, but Seyla had been carrying it for far too long. And now it was Raymond's turn. He wasn't a soldier, but he had seen enough of life to know that this wasn't just some fight for survival. This was a fight for the future. A sudden sound broke through the stillness of the cave, the sharp crack of a branch snapping outside. Raymond's heart leaped into his throat. He stood quickly, his rifle in hand, and motioned for Seyla and Lior to stay down. He moved toward the entrance of the cave, his breath shallow, every sense on alert. He could feel the presence outside, the way the wind shifted, and the trees swayed in a subtle rhythm. It wasn't just the wind. It wasn't just the forest. They were being washed. His worst fear was confirmed when a shadow passed by the entrance. Someone was outside. "Get ready," Raymond whispered, his voice low and steady. "They're here." And just like that, their brief moment of safety was shattered. They were no longer alone. They had been found. The night had fallen, heavy with a sense of impending doom. Raymond's hand shook slightly as he kept his eyes trained on the cave entrance. The sounds of the forest had faded, replaced by a deep, uncomfortable silence. He could feel it, the growing sense of being watched, hunted. The stillness pressed in on him, making the air feel thick and suffocating. He gripped his rifle tightly, but it offered little comfort. In his heart, he knew that nothing could protect them now, not from the danger that was about to unfold. Seyla was sitting with Lior in the far corner of the cave, her eyes closed, her face pale with worry. The boy had fallen into a light sleep, though his small brow was furrowed, as if even in rest, he felt the weight of what was coming. Seyla's gaze flickered toward Raymond, and though her expression was one of exhaustion, there was a quiet determination in her eyes. It was a look he had seen before, a look that told him she had accepted the reality of their situation. There would be no more running. The time had come to face the consequences of her past, and of Lior's existence. A faint noise outside the cave broke the silence, a rustling in the trees, followed by the soft crunch of footsteps on the forest floor. It was too quiet, too careful, for it to be anything other than an enemy. Raymond stepped toward Seyla, his eyes scanning the darkness outside. "They're here," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Seyla nodded. She stood up slowly, lifting Lior into her arms with surprising strength. Her face was calm, but Raymond could see the tension in her muscles, the way her fingers tightened around her son. She knew this was the moment they had been running from. The moment when the past would catch up with them, and they would have to face the reality of what they had become. Raymond glanced at her one last time before moving toward the entrance. He knew there was no turning back now. He had come this far, and he would not let them take Seyla and her child without a fight. Not if he could help it. As he neared the cave's entrance, the silence broke, and in the distance, a figure stepped into the clearing. A tall man, dressed in dark, form-fitting armor, his face obscured by a helmet that gleamed under the faint light of the moon. Behind him, two other figures emerged, moving with a precision and purpose that only soldiers or trained killers could possess. Their eyes glowed faintly with an unnatural light, and their movements were smooth, almost too smooth, like predators stalking their prey. Raymond's breath caught in his throat. They weren't just bounty hunters. These were the people Seyla had spoken of, the ones who had come to destroy Lior. Her family, her people. The leader of the group raised his hand, signaling his companions to stop. His voice, when it came, was cold, devoid of emotion. "You're cornered, Seyla," he said, his words crisp and commanding. "This is the end. The child. He's a mistake, and we will erase him, just as we should have done years ago." Seyla stepped forward, her eyes hard, her voice steady. "He is not a mistake. He is my son, and you will never harm him." The leader of the group laughed, but it was a cruel sound. "Your son? No, Seyla. He is the product of treason, a betrayal of our people. You abandoned your duties, and you created this abomination. It's time to correct that mistake." Raymond stepped forward, his rifle raised slightly, though he knew it wouldn't make a difference. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't equipped to fight these people, but he was determined to protect Seyla and her child. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice rough but full of resolve. The leader's eyes flickered toward Raymond for a moment, his gaze dismissive. "You're a human, an insignificant creature," he sneered. "What could you possibly do to stop us?" Seyla's hand shot out, holding Raymond back. She stepped forward, standing tall between the bounty hunters and her son. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising with a quiet fury. "Lior is not just a child. He is the future of both our worlds, and you cannot erase that. You cannot kill hope." The leader's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing. "Hope," he spat. "You speak of hope, but all I see is a weapon. The universe cannot allow a hybrid to exist. His very existence is a threat to everything we have built. He is a symbol of chaos." Seyla took a deep breath, her shoulders squared. "Then let me show you what hope truly looks like." Without warning, she stepped forward, and as she did, something shifted in the air. Lior's eyes fluttered open, his small hands reaching toward his mother. The air around him began to hum, the temperature dropping as a wave of energy radiated from his body. It was subtle at first, just a soft glow in the dim light of the cave. But as Lior's hand stretched toward the bounty hunters, the glow intensified, swirling around him in a visible, almost tangible form. Raymond watched in awe, his eyes wide. The power was palpable, the energy crackling in the air, the very ground beneath their feet trembling. The trees around them swayed, their branches creaking, as if bending to the will of the child. Seyla stood beside Lior, her eyes focused, her body tense with the effort of controlling the power surging through her son. "This is not chaos," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "This is evolution. This is the future of both our species." The bounty hunters stepped back, momentarily taken aback by the sheer force of Lior's power. The leader's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a snarl. "You think this is power. This is nothing but a threat. A dangerous, uncontrollable force." But Lior didn't respond with anger. He didn't lash out. Instead, he looked at the bounty hunters with wide, innocent eyes, as if he didn't understand why they feared him. And in that moment, something shifted, something Raymond couldn't explain. It was as if the energy in the air shifted, no longer threatening, but inviting. It was the kind of power that didn't destroy, it transformed. It was the kind of power that could bring people together, not tear them apart. The leader hesitated, his hand hovering over his weapon. He was unsure now, thrown off balance by the purity of Lior's power. But before he could act, Seyla stepped forward, her voice steady. "This child is not a weapon," she said. "He is the bridge between our worlds. You can choose to destroy him, or you can choose to embrace the future. The leader's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He wasn't sure what to do. He had been trained to see Lior as a threat, an abomination that had to be eradicated. But now, in the presence of this power, he felt something he hadn't expected. Doubt. But doubt wasn't enough to stop him. With a sharp motion, he drew his weapon and aimed it at Lior. "Enough of this," he growled. Before he could fire, Seyla moved, stepping in front of her son, her body blocking the shot. She extended her hand toward the bounty hunter, and the air crackled with energy as the ground beneath them trembled. The leader stumbled back, his weapon falling from his hands as the energy from Lior's power surged around them like a storm. The bounty hunter's eyes widened in shock, but it was too late. Seyla had made her choice. In that moment, the galaxy's laws no longer mattered. The trial that had begun long ago had reached its breaking point. The fate of both their worlds rested in the hands of a mother and her son. The silence that followed the clash of power in the cave was deafening. It hung in the air like a heavy cloud, thick and suffocating. Raymond's heart pounded in his chest as he stood frozen, his eyes wide, watching the bounty hunters retreat. The leader, now on the ground, scrambled to regain his footing, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. The others, equally stunned, stayed back, unsure of how to proceed. Seyla, standing firm and resolute between Lior and the remaining threats, held herself with an authority that seemed both unnatural and beautiful. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, the strain of her actions evident in the way her shoulders trembled. But her eyes, their calm, unwavering focus, told a different story. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Lior, his small form bathed in the glowing energy that still pulsed around him, stood silent. The light surrounding him flickered in rhythm with his heartbeat, casting long shadows against the cave walls. His eyes were wide but full of understanding, his innocent gaze capturing the world around him in a way that no one else could. It was as though he knew the gravity of the situation, the importance of what had just transpired. He was more than just a child. He was the key to something far greater than the small world they all inhabited. Raymond felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he realized what they were facing. The weight of their reality had shifted in an instant. Seyla's power, Lior's power, was undeniable. What he had thought was a struggle for survival had evolved into something far more complex. He wasn't just protecting a family anymore. He was protecting a future that could change the course of history. The leader, finally regaining his composure, slowly stood. His movements were cautious, as though he had learned a hard lesson in those brief moments of power. He wiped the dirt from his armor. His eyes locked onto Seyla, his voice cold but laced with something else. "This changes nothing. You cannot hide forever, Seyla. There are more of us, and there is no place for him in our world." Seyla's lips parted, but it was Lior who spoke first. His voice was soft, but it carried an echo of something ancient, something far beyond his years. "I don't belong to your world," he said, his voice like a gentle breeze, yet it sent a wave of power through the cave. "I belong here. I belong to Earth." Raymond's heart skipped a beat. The weight of those words sank into him like a stone. This child, this miracle of life, wasn't just caught between two worlds. He was more than that. He had found his place, and that place was here, on Earth. The leader of the bounty hunters took a step back, his expression flickering with a hint of uncertainty. He had expected the confrontation, the anger, the violence, but not this. He had not expected a child, a hybrid, to stand before him with such calm authority, and he certainly had not expected that child to speak with the conviction of someone who knew his purpose. Seyla's eyes softened as she watched Lior. Her son had already begun to step into his power, to embrace the role that had been set before him since his birth. She had always known that one day he would change the world. But now, standing here in the midst of a galactic conflict, with the fate of both their worlds hanging in the balance, she realized just how much had been placed on his tiny shoulders. She turned her gaze back to the leader of the bounty hunters, her voice unwavering. "You came to kill him, she said, each word heavy with resolve. "But what you fail to understand is that he is not the threat. You are." The leader flinched at her words, his eyes narrowing as he took another step back. "You think you can stop us?" he sneered. "We will hunt him down, and we will destroy everything you've built here." But Seyla stood tall. "No, you won't." For a moment, the cave was still. The tension was palpable, the energy between them crackling with an invisible force. And then, without warning, Lior took a step forward. His small hand reached out, and the air around him seemed to ripple. The energy that had been swirling around him condensed into a single point of light, brighter and more intense than anything Raymond had ever seen. The leader's eyes widened, his mouth opening to speak, but no words came. Lior's power surged outward in a pulse of pure energy. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the very air seemed to distort with the force of it. The bounty hunters stumbled back, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. And just like that, Lior stopped. The light dimmed, the pulse faded, and the world returned to its natural state. But the cave felt different now. The air was charged with a power that hadn't been there before. Lior's small form glowed softly in the dim light, but it was no longer a faint glow. It was the unmistakable radiance of a being who had just begun to understand the vastness of his potential. Seyla stepped forward and knelt beside her son, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You are the future, Lior," she whispered, her voice filled with love and pride. "You are the bridge between worlds. You are the hope we have all been waiting for." Raymond's eyes burned with unshed tears as he watched them. He had come to understand this child, this boy, in ways he never thought possible. Lior wasn't just a refugee or a target. He wasn't an alien. He wasn't even human. He was something entirely new, something that could unite two worlds that had been at war for centuries. Lior looked up at Raymond then, his dark eyes full of quiet wisdom, and in that look, Raymond understood. The child wasn't just the key to a peaceful future. He was a protector, a defender of Earth. The leader of the bounty hunters, still shaken, took one final step back. His face was pale, his mouth tight. He didn't speak, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew that whatever had just happened in that moment, whatever Lior had done, it had changed everything. The balance had shifted, and Earth was no longer just a quiet planet at the edge of the galaxy. It was something far more significant. It was the home of a new protector. Seyla turned to Raymond, her face softening. "It's over," she said, her voice full of relief. "We've won." Raymond didn't know how to respond. He had never believed in anything larger than his own survival, but now, standing in the presence of this child, this new protector of Earth, he understood the truth. The universe was vast, and for the first time, he felt a part of something greater than himself. Lior's small hand reached up and touched Raymond's arm. "I will protect this world," he said softly, his voice full of quiet strength. "I will protect Earth." And in that moment, Raymond knew that Earth was safe, because Lior, this child born of two worlds, had made it his home. And he would defend it with everything he had.